Hi everyone, I'm delighted to have Dr. James Cockburn with me this morning from the Teen Heart Project. He's going to talk to us about cardiac screening, why it's so important in schools. So, James, really great for you to come in on this morning. Perhaps you could explain why you got into this and what services you're offering.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me. Yes, absolutely. I mean, like everything in life, it starts off with a case. And my main case was a young guy who was a rugby player locally in Brighton. He had been, interestingly, in an elite pathway for a few years and had undergone cardiac screening in the form of an ECG. And then following a rugby festival, ended up having a stroke and was referred to me thereafter, where I listened to his heart, and actually he had a heart murmur as well. And that led to me thinking, hold on a moment, maybe we can do this cardiac screening a little bit better. Maybe we can combine not just the ECG screening, which assesses for the electrical abnormalities that can happen with the heart, but then similarly look for any structural abnormalities with the heart, as a heart murmur often identifies either problems with the heart valve, which you may have been born with, or problems with the heart muscle. And then I went back to the school saying, look, I think that we could probably do this heart screening a bit better. I had a vested interest because my son was playing in the rugby team there at the same time. And then when I spoke to the head of sport there, who was pretty forward thinking, he said, yeah, of course you can screen the rugby team, but then you need to screen the girls. And I said, of course we can do the girls. And then the head of strength and conditioning then said, well, you've got to do the dancers because they're the fittest at the school. And then I realized I'd opened this big can of worms that suggested that we should at least offer cardiac screening to anyone who wanted to consider it. It's not mandated, but people with their parents can make an informed decision. And certainly, as you know, school sports has moved on from the days where, certainly when I did it, where you turned up and play, people are undertaking near professional levels of sport now with active recovery and strength and conditioning and all of these things. And so screening seemed to be a logical next step. And similarly, a few parents on the sidelines were starting to ask me, how do I screen my child? Is this important? And so on. And that's where the whole project started from, essentially. And to be fair to it, if you look at the data, the Italians that lead in Europe over the cardiac screening, in August, it's pretty much impossible to get any form of GP appointment or specialist appointment with a heart specialist because you have to return at 16 to school with a signed ECG to say that you're fit to play. And by doing so, they've reduced the risk of sudden cardiac death by a whopping 89%. So the data doesn't lie. If you're interested, I'm not saying it's mandated, but if you do want to have it done, then certainly this can save lives.
That's brilliant, James. We talked before about that 16 age group. Why is that so important and why have you targeted that particular age group?
I think it's really important because at that point, your kids are theoretically gone through puberty. So your chances of getting it right from a single screening uh, are going to be highest at that time point. You can certainly screen your kids earlier if you choose to, but until they reach maturity, then their heart isn't fully grown. So the chances of a false positive or a false negative, either overcalling it or undercalling, is that little bit higher. And so I think myself that if you target 16, you can transition the kids through sixth form, where competitive sport is probably at its highest level, with the knowledge both for your child and for the school that things are going to be okay, and then similarly transition off to university or into work knowing that things have been checked and that things are okay.
And I'm sure there'll be lots of schools interested. I know you've already visited lots and lots of schools as well. What's the process look like and what happens when you come into school, James?
Absolutely. So what we do is we bring essentially what is a mobile clinic. So there will be a cardiologist as a heart specialist to listen to the hearts, two specialist nurses which will perform the ECGs, and then essentially what we do is set up a clinic either in the medical centre, in a spare classroom. We've even done it in a cricket pavilion. It doesn't really matter where it needs to be done, and then essentially you book, or the parent chooses to book a 10-minute slot through our website, which is www.teenheartproject.com. And then in that, their child arrives, they get their ECG done, and then a specialist cardiologist will listen to your heart. And it's kind of bonkers because if you're a fit and healthy child, your heart probably hasn't been listened to since the day 2 of your baby check when you've been born. And so in all of this, it is probably important just to make sure that all of these things are checked over. And so the 10-minute slot is ideal. It enables the ECG to happen plus the examination. And then within a 2-week period, we return a bespoke report saying, look, everything looks fine. That's a green screening. Your cardiovascular examination and your ECG are okay. Enjoy all your sport, move forward into adult life knowing that everything's okay. And then on the rare occasion, we find things which are amber, which might be a little heart murmur. These can vary due to simple things like high heart rate, which certain kids might have. Similarly, they can be associated in around about 1 in 100 of having an underlying cardiac heart valve abnormality, whereby early detection of that doesn't mean you can't play sport, but it's good to know that it's there and those sorts of things, and then it can be followed up on. And then on the rare occasion, we return what's called a red screening, which is where the ECG and sometimes the murmur as well might be identified, and that's associated with a true cardiac heart muscle or electrical abnormality, whereby we would recommend further investigation under a specialist cardiac team to look for hereditary conditions or heart muscle abnormalities, for example, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And that's about 1 in 300. So not common, but important to know because they're the real ones that can put you at risk. And I'm sure everyone is aware of Fabrice Muamba, who was the famous Bolton footballer who collapsed at Tottenham Hotspur. He had hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And there has been increased awareness now of the importance of screening. Earlier in the year, there was a double-page spread in the Sunday Times about the poor lad that collapsed at Eton, for example. And so I think that schools are very much aware that if it's important at least to consider offering this program. I'm not saying it's mandated, but by doing so, parents and kids can make an informed decision about whether they want to go through this process. And so really and truly what we're trying to do is disseminate and offer the screening out to as many kids as possible. The more we screen, the better it can be. The reason being that at the moment, there is no national screening program for heart conditions as it stands at this stage. And having worked in the NHS for a while, I'm not sure it's going to come anytime soon otherwise.
Brilliant. So you offer this service to schools. The schools write to their parents and say you are able to choose to have this. The parents pay, and then you come to the school, and the process goes ahead. What sort of costs are we talking about, James?
There's a nominal fee, mainly because we have to pay the staff, we have to be insured, we have the same level of governance that a hospital would otherwise have, and that maintains a nominal fee. The price point, for example, for a ECG, if you came to see me in clinic, Chris, would be about £147. That's what the NHS would pay for having that done. We're aiming to offer cardiac screening at around about £100 because we want it to be out and available to as many people as possible, essentially.
Yeah, that's fantastic and brilliant that you're doing that. So just as we finish, what sort of advice and support could you give to directors of sport moving forward? How can they contact you? I'll obviously put your details at the bottom of this takeaway video and your presentation that you've given us. What other information directors of sport need to have?
So we have a website, which, as I said, is www.teenheartproject.com. On that, there is a contact us and there's an info@teenheartproject.com. If anyone would like us to come, we are very flexible. We will do dates that work around important things like public examinations and various other bits and pieces. We can come on a weekday. Similarly, if there's real interest, we'll come at a weekend. It
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. It's more about the availability of offering this service. And I think a lot of schools have taken it up because it's a sort of well-being slash important thing to be seen as forward thinking and offering all of these bits and pieces nowadays. And so if anyone is interested, please get in touch. We'd happily chat and similarly arrange either a Teams meeting or a Zoom like this, and we can sit down one-to-one and discuss the benefits and of offering cardiac screening in your school.
That's brilliant, James, and obviously thanks to that, you're doing a brilliant job. I know a few schools I've spoken to already have really appreciated what you're doing. So, as I say, I'll put all the information on the bottom of this takeaway video, and also we're going to share an article in our newsletter so that people can find out more about it. But as I say, James, thanks very much for all you're doing, and hopefully we'll see you in a few of our schools soon.
Thanks ever so much, Chris, and thank you very much for helping us with this.